You're listening to the Decidedly podcast with Sanger Smith and Sean Smith. Our mission is to help business owners like you defeat bad decision-making so you can improve your health, wealth, and relationships. We do this by digging deep into the stories and expertise of our guests and distilling their knowledge into actionable wisdom for you to carry into your life and business. If you're new to the show, welcome. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of our weekly episodes. If you prefer to watch this week's episode, head on over to YouTube for the full video. Now, let's get into this week's episode and defeat bad decision-making in your life and business.
Do you take work with you when you are away from the office for free time? Or when like you go purposefully away somewhere?
No, not if I'm like going on vacation, but I make a delineation between whether it's a vacation or a work trip. Of course, if it's a conference or something, or if I'm going to visit, clients who live out of town or something, then I'm definitely taking work. But if it's a vacation, oh, heck no.
Oh, I see people ruin their time away by just being on their phone or checking emails or having a conference call.
Delete the app. Delete Outlook app. I'm not doing that.
They're getting no utility from that time, which should be refreshment and rejuvenation and all that.
And as soon as you let it in, other people will abuse it. A lot of times I see people like, oh, well, my assistant scheduled this thing for me. That's not her fault. That's your fault for letting her do it before. Yeah. You shouldn't. You got to stand up and go, hey, I see you scheduled that. I'm out of town. You're going to have to reschedule that. I know that's inconvenient for you, but you're going to have to fix it.
Yeah, I think that was
smart. Actually good advice I got from you, where you were like, that's not your team's fault. That's your fault for letting it happen.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, our guest today, a personal friend of the podcast. Derrick Kinney. He is a former wealth advisor, sold his business, and is now focused on taking financial advice to the masses. He is a media personality, business coach, and consultant. He makes complex business topics and finance topics easy to understand. He's been on CNBC, Fox, CNN, Fox Business, every other channel that your TV offers. He's probably been on it too. He's the host of the top-rated Good Money podcast, where he inspires business owners and entrepreneurs to make more money and do more good, a topic that we got into today. He's had Matthew McConaughey on his show, Mel Robbins, A-list celebrities. As far as I'm concerned, he's an A-list celebrity almost on his own. So stick around, listen to Derrick and his insights on money, business, and the life skills that aren't taught in school. I'm Sanger Smith with my dad, Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Hey, Sanger, how are you? How are you, Sean?
Good. So, interview with the president. What was it this morning?
I wish it was with the Stars coach. I would have given him a few pointers about last night. But
yeah, that was heartbreaking. But we got the Mavs, we got the Rangers. As long as everyone succeeds to the point that the Cowboys look bad, then maybe we can manufacture some change. I'm thrilled to talk to you because we have so much overlap in the work that we do and the audiences that we have, and so I always get a lot of value out of watching your show, reading your book, and following up with the work that you're doing on LinkedIn, social media, everywhere. It's like I turn on pull up my phone. It's Joe Rogan and Derrick Kinney that I see like all the time. So
is it right?
I can't escape you. But we couldn't get Joe Rogan on, so I tried to get Derrick Kinney.
the next best thing.
The next best thing.
Derrick and I have been tag teaming each other on our careers for 25 years, I think.
Oh, it's been a long
did I ever
time.
tell you how Derrick and I met?
No.
So I was doing, I used to do a bunch of presentations. I would go out different places. I went to this church and I'm doing a presentation for the people, about, saving money and investing and things like that. And afterwards, this guy comes up to me and basically the message was, this looks pretty easy. I want to learn how to do it.
I don't know if I said those words, Sean.
Well, I said that was the message.
Proved you right, kind of.
Basically, if you can do this, anybody can do that. This looks like.
Actually, that's the same thought I had, Derek.
right.
Hey, a really good practitioner makes it look easy. A
That's
good
right.
actor doesn't look like he's acting. So there, eat that.
That's funny.
So we and I was talking about how our careers have sort of tag teamed each other. I sold my business in 2019. You sold your business the next year.
Yeah, 2020.
Your financial planning business. And both of these.
This was a pre-COVID, post-COVID sale.
Mine was pre-COVID. I mean, just before COVID broke out.
Snaked it in right under the wire.
Snuck it in. Yeah.
You and I have talked about this, Derek, but I wanted you to tell Sanger how you sold your business, because I don't think Sanger has heard this story. So, like, what brought you to that decision point on why you sold?
Yeah. So one of the things, and I think, Sean, you do this as well. Don't you do a sabbatical? Do you go away?
I do. In fact,
he waltzed in here today, Derek. He goes, I'm off for the summer.
Yes.
And I said, were you on at any point this time?
You just, you're taking every chance to jab me. I'm doing something good, and
let's clarify this.
I say that with like a respect, is you definitely aren't consumed by work.
Well, I started taking a sabbatical. I didn't call it a sabbatical, but I would start taking off. It started out about 3 weeks, and then I had a week following it, and I was like, well, why should I come back to the office for 3 days or something? I'll just take it off. And so what it helped me do was to create organization and structure in my business to be gone that long, because you can be gone for a week easily, but you can't be gone for 4 weeks easily.
Right.
That extended to 4 weeks, and I've been doing that for 15 years, just taking 2 months off consecutively. And the way it helped my business was immeasurable in terms of the systems and the people, the processes I had to put in place. I don't know that I do as much deep thinking and reworking as you do on yours, though, Derek.
Well, before I answer that, have you guys seen the movie The Founder about Ray Kroc?
Yeah.
Is that the McDonald's
with Michael Keaton? Michael Keaton.
Oh, yeah.
So as Sean's talking, there's this image that pops into my head where they go to a tennis court, and they've got all their employees there, and they're sketching out move by move how they make the most efficient hamburger. And it's almost like this orchestra of efficiency. And they write it on the chalk, the tennis court in chalk, they erase it, write it. They repeat this over and over until they finally get where there's no missed moves. And the reason I think about that movie is, for a lot of people who have a family business, or people that are in business, but they feel like they're sucked in and they're not working on it, they're sucked in it. One of the best ways to force the issue is to remove yourself from the process. One of my friends jokingly said in a team meeting, in the middle of the meeting, he laid down and feigned like he was dead. And they were like, well, now what are we going to do? And he sat up and said, that's the question you need to figure out. Now, what are you going to do? Because I'm not going to help you. And the point was, sometimes you have to force people into figuring out the systems that you can create without you, because ultimately that drives up the multiple when you can simply step out of the business and the new owner steps in, and the same systems and processes keep cranking. So anyway, when you said that movie, it wasn't really good how they got McDonald's. There was some sort of some skullduggery that went on there, but the efficiency lessons, I don't think, should be overlooked.
Yeah. Well, I've done that exercise where I've had a team meeting. I didn't tell them I was going to do this. And I got up and I said, on this day, I have left for work and I never made it here. And I passed away. Now, what are you doing today? What happens today?
Yeah.
What, and I want you to, figure it out. And then I left. I just left for the day.
Was this planned, or did you decide?
No, I knew I was going to do it. No, I knew I was going to do it.
That sounds like a good excuse for a lack of plan. Oh, crap. I didn't come up with an agenda today.
Because that's a thoughtful exercise to go through when you're talking about taking a sabbatical. You're taking time off to think about working on your business rather than in your business. What specifically are you engaging in and thinking about that you want to work on moving forward?
Yeah. So and part of that is, what do I think about on the sabbatical? I realized I'm an A personality guy, and it's a good quality. It drives me. I can accomplish a lot of things.
A personality guy would say that it's a good quality.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, of course you'd say it's a good quality.
And all of our A listeners, of course, are nodding their head as they're listening to this. Of course, we are the greatest. Everybody is born maybe a B, C, or D, but the greatest overcome.
But they all want to be A's. Yeah,
exactly. Deep inside, they want to be A's. So what I realized is I was running really fast toward my goals, but sometimes if I didn't know what those goals were and I took the time to write them down, I was running fast in a circle. I didn't want to do that. If I was going to run fast 52 weeks out of the year, I need to take 1 week to figure out what am I running fast toward. And so on my sabbatical, this happened to be July of 2019. I'm in the Boston W Hotel overlooking the harbor. I just pick different places each year. And I ask myself 3 questions. How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father? And how can I be a better business owner? And those 3 questions guide my whole time away. And this particular sabbatical was unique in that I was really thinking about, I wasn't as into being a financial advisor as I had been. I was going through the motions. We were very successful, a top-ranked business in the country, but I wasn't deriving a lot of satisfaction from it. And I didn't want to be that athlete. And you know the athlete I'm talking about that does really, really well, and then suddenly the last 2 years of their career suck. And you wonder, why didn't they retire when they were on top? Why didn't they leave when things looked really, really good, right? And I didn't want to be that person. And I realized if I didn't sell my practice, I was going to be letting my team down, myself down, and even my clients down because I wasn't all in. So I write this list down on my sabbatical of what would I like to do. And I call this Derrick 2.0. What's the next version of me? I wrote down, write a book, launch a podcast, coach, speak, consult. And on that list was not being a financial advisor that I knew. Literally,
was it absent from the list, or was it the list included, I don't want to be doing this anymore?
Well, the list was, what are things I want to be doing next? What would most excite me? And what I realized when I reviewed the list, Sanger, was, oh my gosh, what I've been doing 25 years now is not on the list.
So it's just not, it didn't make the cut.
Didn't make the cut, and it confirmed what I'd been thinking.
That probably had to be like listing the top 5 most important people in your life and realizing your wife wasn't on it. Like, oh no, I made an error.
Yeah. Sean, Sanger, I'm like, Kara's got to be on the list here somewhere. But it was eye-opening. So I'm 2 hours into my sabbatical, and I called my wife and said, Kara, are you sitting down? And she'd been funny. She'd been kind of praying the same direction and kind of thinking about this as well. And so she wasn't surprised. So she was totally supportive. But the irony was, not a few months earlier, I was looking to expand. We were looking to buy some practices in Nashville. We like that area a lot. And what I looked at was, where can I fly within an hour-and-a-half radius of Dallas-Fort Worth? And those were other financial planning businesses that were an easy flight, easy to travel to. And so this was really a big reversal, but it lined up with really who I was. The challenge was I wasn't selling to do something definite. I was just going to bet on myself again. I figured, heck, if I did this once, I could do it again. Has it been harder than I thought? Yes, but I'm glad I did it. And I'm still in that reinvention phase right now.
Yeah, so you thought, hey, I'll figure it out. I don't know exactly, but you had an idea of the guiding principles that were going to navigate your life in that next stage.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that the biggest holdback for me was I love recurring revenue. I just have a real passion for it. It's a good relationship.
That's weird. That's strange, Derrick.
and what I realized was
benevolently motivated by subscription models.
I mean, it's like a match made in heaven, Derrick, and a subscription model. It's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, okay, if I'm going to walk away from this, what does that look like? And this is going to sound so simple, but maybe it'll help a listener or two. I basically was selling to monetize the recurring revenue stream. That I basically got the present value of that. And basically that dollar amount was simply a bet on me to see if I could then recreate that same revenue stream again, and how quickly could I do it? So that's really the game I'm playing right now, is how can I add the most value to people and solve the most painful problems and build up another recurring revenue stream?
Did you feel challenged taking that approach of sort of making that's a massive decision, sell a business, and particularly business that's of scale like yours, and going into something and you're not clear what you're going into. Because I remember you and I talking, we had this conversation over coffee, and I said, so what are you going to be doing, Derrick? And I came away from that discussion not knowing the answer to that question. And you'd list about 5 things, I think, kind of like what, I'm going to do this, and this. And I'm like, oh man, I hope Derrick figures it out. And you have, you've done that.
That's such an entrepreneur.
It is,
but you wouldn't be you if you were like, well, I've got a 47-page business plan on my next venture. Like, no, like that's the skill that you have, is the ability to figure it out as you go. And other people don't have that skill. It doesn't mean that they're going to be less successful in business or in life. It just means they need to leverage their skills, which are thorough planning in advance or research or whatever. And I think we all kind of share in that natural tendency that is, let me just go do it. I don't exactly know necessarily what I'm doing or how I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out the how and the what and the who and everything as I'm going. But if we can answer, the why, then everything else can fall. If you don't have a why, if you don't have a compelling why, then you're going to end up lost. But if you have a compelling why, the how will, reveal itself.
Yeah, I think, and that's where I was going, is that, for so often when we talk to people about taking the next step, or let's say retirement, for example, we've always said, don't retire from something, retire to something.
Right.
But I think you make a good point, Sanger, is that too can be defined by the why. It doesn't have to be specifically, defined, very, very clearly, because you may not know the answers yet.
You'll never get
to do
there.
That. They hold you back.
You take yourself back 5 years ago to being in the, not just deep in the business, but deep in like, how do I expand the business? Oh my gosh, come up with a clear plan for that on top of everything you're doing for the business. It just wouldn't have happened.
Well, what I had to realize was, and there was a dose of humble pie that I had to take. And one was, have I taken my business as far as I can take it? And ultimately that answer was yes. I realized that based on my skill set, based on even coaches I brought in and things I've learned along the way, if I grew it more, it was really not going to be at a stage I wanted to go to. And so I've realized, okay, now is the time for me then to find somebody who can do it better than me. And let me pause there for a second, because this was really, really hard for me, because I've always prided myself on being the guy. And I think, you guys have a great podcast, the people listening, if you're honest, you think to yourself, look, there's nobody who can do this better than me. And when you sell it, really the motto is you have successfully found a person better than you to run the business. And so what I didn't want to do was simply hand off my clients. I wanted to hand them up. And the visual was that if my clients and I were having coffee a year from now, a year after the sale, I wanted them to walk up and thank me for finding someone better than me to carry that relationship forward. And I thought it was about them, here's a great dollar amount, here's a successful sale, but ultimately you want to keep handing people up in the process. That's how you look the best. So you actually,
I think that's a really mature way to think about it, because I think there are a lot of business owners who have a fear that they have 2 fears when they transition their client relationships. One is that it will be worse, right? And their client will get underserved. The client will be angry with them. And so they have a fear that the client's going to be upset. The second fear they have is that the client won't be upset. that the client will be thrilled. Like, oh, this is way better than how Derrick was doing it.
Right.
And so to look at that and sort of putting that need first, that client first, is really kind of setting ego aside. How did you go from there? Okay, so there's a decision point that I think, like a lot of business owners, you have a high relationship or a good relationship with uncertainty and vulnerability, right? And so you're going to wade into lots of things. You have lots of ideas, lots of innovation. I could write a book. I could do a podcast. I could do coaching. I could do public speaking. There's so many ways you can go. How did you distill that decision making into one path or multiple paths. What was that like?
Well, it's interesting how fast my identity left me. You know, I was building up to the culmination of the sale. One of the hardest things I ever did was calling each client individually and letting them know of my decision. That took about a month and a half. I was calling about 15 to 20 people or so a day, took a couple breaks. But I literally, if we're being honest here, I literally broke down in tears after my last phone call to the last client, because every phone call I made, it was like pressing a video of our history together. And in that process, I actually took notes. I need to go back and look at them again, but I took notes on what people said because I knew there could be dark days ahead of questioning myself. Did I make a good decision? Should I have not done it? And sometimes I will go back and look at those, and it encourages me that I know I made the right decision. One lady, though, I thought she summed it up the best. She said, Derrick, listen, if you're going to have a midlife crisis, which is what this sounds like, just go buy a Corvette. It's a whole lot cheaper than selling your business. But what I realized was people didn't understand what I was doing. So I automatically entered, I called it the misunderstood land. And that is, people understand people with a job, with a business card, and with a business. They know what they're doing. But I struggled to tell people what I was doing. And I went from being a financial advisor, that was the box they placed Derrick in, to now being a box that got kicked over, busted out. And it was hard for me to identify and talk about what I'm doing. And so it's funny how you can quickly begin to feel irrelevant when you're not clearly defined by what other people think you should do. So part of my job now is to let people know, look, I built a successful business. I sold it. Now I'm reinventing myself. I'm not retiring. I'm simply rewiring and building something better.
How often did people think that you had retired or talk to you as, oh yeah, you just retired?
It happens a lot. And at first, candidly, Sanger, at first it really annoyed me because I was like, no, I'm not retiring. But you got to realize most people outside of the entrepreneurial space can't fathom being an entrepreneur on the island they live on. They simply can't fathom it. They're simply either working or retired. Those are the two ends of that continuum.
I used to bug him all the time. Like, he'd come and tell me, so-and-so said I was retired. I'm not retired. Don't they know I'm still working? Like, I can
relate to what Sean's saying.
I haven't experienced it, but I can imagine that would irritate me.
It was irritating.
It would irritate me. Like, no, man, I'm doing stuff. I'm having a meaningful impact in the world. I'm young, first of all. Like there's something that I'm sure you're feeling like, what are you saying? I'm old? What are you saying? I'm done, that I have no more impact to give. But that's from their perspective. You're right. Like they don't know what it's like to own a business. They can't fathom it. They don't want it. And they definitely can't fathom going and starting one from nothing without even a clear plan of how you're going to make it happen. It's funny to see people who are not a natural entrepreneur go through that process. I'll see people who, hey, you know what? I'm working at this job. I think I'm going to go start my own practice. And they'll spend 3 months on like, what should I name my business? Or they'll spend 4 months on just going through in their head, what are all the ways that this could fail? And so we talk 4 months later, they still haven't even, got the DBA or whatever. Like, you know what? It might not be for you, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think because the image that we have of retirement is nothing, is not doing anything. I mean, you can travel, play golf, and drink, and that's what most people think about. But I think the biggest success is when you go from a transition into that stage of your life, and you were so engaged. My friend Gene, when his father passed away years ago, I was talking to Gene afterwards, and he goes, gosh, I don't know what to do. My dad has this deal going on, and he was right in the middle of it. And this guy owes him some stuff, and, he was doing a contract with this, and this house he was building over there for renters was undone. And, I've got to find out, who all his guys are. And he was just lamenting all of this stuff that his dad had going on. And I said, Gene, what a successful life. Like, this guy left an unfinished life, which is, it sounds bad. Like, oh, you leave an unfinished life. No, that means you were doing stuff.
It means he didn't stop.
Doing stuff. He didn't stop. So I think that's a mindset change. So back to that question though, how did you decide what you wanted to engage in between all the opportunities? I think people with talent, and you're certainly one of them, people who have a lot of talent have a lot of opportunity, and people who have a lot of opportunity have to then make choices. What am I not going to do? What am I going to do? Were there things you decided you had to just say no to?
Yeah, I mean, suddenly when you have a lot of time on your hands, people assume, just like you said, Sean, that, well, now you're retired, you have all the time in the world. And I would remember that when my clients retire, they would tell me, Derrick, I've never been so busy than when I've been retired. And it's because now you have time to do everything. But when you were sort of working that 9-to-5 job, you had to cram it all in at the end of the day. And part of me, I would go back to my list. My list is really what guided me of, okay, why am I doing this? I wanted to write a book, launch the podcast, coach, speak, consult. Those were all things that candidly I could clearly see in my mind as really happening. Like I could see the picture as plain as day, me on a stage in front of thousands of people talking about money and business. I could see that clearly. Or writing a book. I could see that clearly, publishing a book or doing the podcast. And so all of those things were things I asked myself, how do they make me feel when I think about it? And, let me go back a second too, because Sanger, you mentioned, writing the book and so forth. And when the book first came out, I made a big mistake. And that was I overthought it. And it was a bad decision because I came up with a 10-page marketing plan of all the people I was going to talk to and the things I was going to do and how we were going to sell this thing. And I'm a faith-based guy. And as I was praying through it, I just felt like the word I got was scrap the entire business plan. This was the day before the book was going to launch. And I just felt like I was supposed to write the following on a sticky note. And the following was, tell influential people to buy your book. Have influential people tell their followers to buy your book. So basically, it was not about me getting the Facebook ads and the LinkedIn ads and all these things. It was simply calling the people who knew me, liked me, trusted me, and saying, hey, would you tell your followers on Instagram and LinkedIn and other social media on your podcast to buy the book? And that's what helped to become a bestseller. And so sometimes it's just getting out of our own way and doing the simplest thing, which typically involves other humans. It doesn't typically involve email if it's going to be a quicker success.
Yeah, so you can kind of overdo it sometimes.
Yes, and I'm guilty of that.
Carry too much. It's like you probably experience that in your business too, where you stop one day and you go, okay, no, I can't. I'm doing 100% of these, this system, or I'm carrying the bag entirely in this area. So I don't have to do that. I had a client of mine a few years ago. He was working on, I don't remember the project, but the point is, I was like, well, you've told me that you wanted to get this done. It hasn't gotten done. We've talked about it 3 times. Like, what do you need? Why isn't it getting done? He goes, I just haven't made time to, talk to her, talk to my admin and work through the problem. I go, well, just put a time on the calendar. Because I know I just can't. I go, why don't you have her put it on the calendar? What are you doing? Like, you're taking 100% of this
right.
for yourself. And it was like the most simple advice anyone could have ever given him. And he, I could see the light bulb go off over his head. He was like, oh, I don't have to do everything. Like, and this was a guy like early on in his, business. Maybe this was like his first or second employee. Like, yeah, we that's our tendency, particularly as a founder, is to go, I got to do it all. And like, you can't do it all in business. And that's the same in life. If you are a father and you're trying to carry everything, like everything for your family, you're going to fail. Like, if you're a mother and I'm taking care of the house and I'm earning the money and I'm getting the kids to soccer practice and I'm making sure our doctor's appointments are scheduled. Like you cannot do it all. And if you try, you can be disappointed. You were talking earlier about asking yourself specific questions. How do I get better as a father, as a business owner, as a husband? I think that's a great exercise. And when I talk to clients, sometimes we have a tendency to get focused on the day-to-day and not step back and go, what am I really motivated by? And so you're obviously motivated by those 3 areas of your life. What were the types of answers you were finding? Were they tactical answers? Were they habits? Or were they bigger than that?
For me, it didn't used to be like this when the kids were younger. We have 4 kids now, and all but one of them is out of the house. He graduated high school last year. And early on, it was all more tactical, like, okay, let's get them through this semester. Let's get them through this. But I would say over the past couple years, it's been more thinking about who are they becoming. And parenting was less about parenting in the moment, but it was more about who are we parenting them to be 3-5 years from now. And that's where the emotions would flow, where I would think about, my gosh, if I was on that sabbatical, July 15th, 2019, and I think about, okay, where will I be July 19th of 2024, for example? Where will my kids be? And it made me tear up thinking, man, the stuff I'm doing now to teach them, the decisions I'm making and the steps I'm taking doesn't matter. And I'll tell you a story on that. This was a big breakthrough for my son and I. So my youngest son, Dylan, we'd had a very contentious relationship and things had kind of gone off the rails a little bit. And I was always pestering him about his room. I mean, I swear there's carpet in his room. I just haven't seen it for years because there's so much stuff on his floor. It's such a mess. And the bathroom is just a mess. And as he's starting his senior year at high school, I just felt like I needed to completely change my tone as a dad. And the message that I was getting was, this is man training. This is man training. No longer worry about his room, his bathroom. You want to take the next year to give him as much flexibility so that you're training him as a man under your roof, because a year from now, he's out. And I also had to realize that even if I were to tell him, okay, now don't do drugs and don't do this and so forth, once he backed his truck out of the driveway, he was in total control of his life. He didn't have to do anything, I said. And so then my game changed, Sanger, to be, I'm simply a man of influence. I'm not a man of control in my kid's life. And so when I began to treat him like a man and extend his curfew, and he fumbled the ball a couple times, but walking him through having real candid discussions about life, it was powerful. And it really transformed our relationship. And so that to me was the moment I wanted to have the most control, is when I needed to pull back and actually choose to have the least control to truly have the most control, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I think that transition from control to influence happens earlier than a lot of parents think. And if you don't treat that relationship of influence with care, you lose that.
Yes.
Yeah, you lose the influence,
Mm-hmm.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got friends who are 30 whose moms still try to tell them, how to decorate their living room. Like some people don't get it.
It doesn't end.
Right. Then it becomes, just like in the room situation, hey, my room was messy when I was his age too. It's like you tell him so much that now every time you bring it up, he's less likely. He's like, there's a part of him that just wants to have a messy room to spite you. It's like, this is my freedom. This is my power. When we don't have power, like we're going to look, everybody wants to have power and influence and control over their own life. And when we don't, like we're going to exercise it in ways that are unhealthy, maybe even to our own detriment, right? One thing that fascinates me, if you walk through a bad part of town, you'll see people just walk across a busy street without a care in the world. They're not waiting for the crosswalk. They'll just walk right out in front of a car and they'll walk slow, like almost daring you to hit them. And you walk in a nice neighborhood, you'll see people out for a walk, jogging, pushing their baby stroller. They're not doing that. Why do they do that in a poor neighborhood where you would think logically, like, it might be more dangerous? You know, the way the streets are designed, the reckless driving, like it's probably more dangerous to jaywalk in the bad neighborhood than in the nice subdivision. But people are more likely to do it where it's more dangerous. That's just one small way where they're taking their power and influence back in their own life. They're saying, you know what, maybe I don't have any control over my family life. Maybe I don't have any control over my bad job that I've got. I got no money, got nothing going for me. But hey, I can take as long as I want across this road. Like, what are you going to do? And as a kid, like especially a teenage boy, hey, I want this. I want freedom. I want control. I want something that's my own. Dang, now dad's busting my back about cleaning this room. I'm going to make it dirty. Like, what's he going to do? And we'll hurt our own self to get that power and influence. I think it's important. Like, how can I find something that's healthy to control? And if I can focus on something that's healthy to control, I'm less likely to, like, you know, fall into a negative habit. I'm going to control how much I eat. So I'm going to binge eat because I got nothing else I can control. I'm going to control my free time. Well, now it's going to be all Netflix. Like, find the way that I can control something healthily and lead to a much better outcome for sure.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
When you looked at that, the three questions you were asking yourself, looking at, you know, how to become a better father, husband, business owner, a friend of mine takes a similar approach and looks each year kind of at 4 categories and says, you know, how do I want to become better spiritually? How do I want to become better in terms of my health? And how do I want to become better in terms of my relationships? And how do I want to become better, in terms of my emotional and mental well-being? And comes up with things in those categories to advance each of those 4 areas. I started years ago looking at an exercise with clients and people I was doing coaching with that looked at sort of a wheel diagram, kind of a spider web diagram that would, these concentric circles that would radiate out, and you would divide that up into pie pieces and look at each of these 8 pie pieces having a category. And they were things like friendships and faith, finances, health, just kind of going on, family, adventure, travel, the different categories we would put together for each of them, and have them score themselves as to where they were, close to the center being not very good, at the edge being the best, and looking at how well-rounded they self-assessed themselves to be, and identifying those areas where there were divots in the wheel, so to speak, to say, well, what are the things I need to do to improve this area that I am self-assessing myself as being deficient? It became a really interesting exercise to go through, similar to what you were doing. But I think it is important to stop at some part during the year. A lot of people do it around the holidays, around New Year's, to sort of say, how do I want to improve? How do I want to grow as a person? And part of that may be as a business owner, but just how do I want to grow? And I think you always have to be doing that.
What do you think is like the most useful tactic that you implemented in your life to be able to find those opportunities for growth?
I think it came twofold. One, I think I learned of what do I wish someone would have done for me when I was younger. And, I'm a big goal setter, huge goal setter. And, we set family goals. Okay, this is where the story is going. And so for the past 10 years, typically about a day or so before New Year's, I'll walk the 4 kids, and Kara, and my wife has included as well, through a family goal setting exercise. It takes about 2 hours. And we go through a couple categories and so forth. And the first couple of years we did this, the kids would not come close to cussing dad out, throwing stuff at dad. I can't believe you're wasting my time. I can't believe you're making us do this. And now 10 years later, they're bringing their friends to it. And we're having lunch together as a family yesterday. And a couple from church is going, they're moving out of the area. And they're asking the kids, hey, what are some things that were influential that your parents helped you with? And I was kind of curious when they asked this question. And my oldest daughter says, I would say family goal setting would be one of the biggest influences on my life. And she said that my parents would ask, hey, based on our goals, what can we do to support you with your goals? And I think I'm answering the question like that, Sanger, because goal setting for me is very personal. It has driven me to achieve a lot of things I've wanted to achieve. But when I think about more is caught than taught to our kids, I think when our kids can see mom and dad failing and getting back up and setting a goal and then failing and then getting back up and setting new goals and then succeeding, I think that teaches them some of the greatest lessons, but it also reinforces to me, and I think the biggest lesson I've learned most recently is that people like imperfect people better. You know, during COVID, when we were all back around the dinner table again, everybody was back home from school. It was like a little house on the prairie all over again. We would do this game, highs and lows. A lot of families do this. What's your high of the day, low of the day? I realized most of my answers were pretty boring, but I had made an investment a couple days early and I lost a couple $1,000s on it. Just took a flyer on it. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna drop this on the kids as my low for the day. So they said, okay, Dad, what's your high? I shared something. What's your low? And I said, hey guys, you're not going to believe this, but Dad really screwed up today. Well, you could have heard a pin drop. It was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best ever. Dad really messed up. We've been waiting all our lives for this story. I told them about how much money I lost, and they were like, how did you lose that much money? I said, well, it was my best decision-making that made that decision, but I knew there was a risk with it. And what happened was it began to really endear me to my kids all over again. And I realized, my gosh, I've been wasting so much time trying to act like the perfect parent. The way to be the perfect parent is to be more imperfect. And the more I shared with them my mistakes and things I was thinking about and failings I've had, they loved it. I mean, it was out of COVID I realized, my gosh, the greatest lessons I can give my kids about money and business are how I failed or missed opportunity versus how I succeeded. And so that's really helped me take a more realistic picture of myself in terms of like, Derrick, let yourself off the hook. Part of success and part of being an entrepreneur is failure. But if you're withholding that, then really you're failing your family.
I apologize for never demonstrating that.
No, you did. No, you did. I learned a lot. Don't worry. I know that to be true, that we are more focused and able to learn lessons from failures and success. Because like whatever the avenue, whatever that pathway is that you're pursuing, that you did succeed at, you tell me about it and I've got an idea already of how I would handle it. Like everybody, whether it's your kid, your employee, your business partner, whatever, it's like, oh, well, this is how you get really good at this. But there's some part of my ego that's like, I know, but maybe I could do it this way too. So I'm not saying you failed, you didn't do it right, but like, do I really need to listen to Derrick? I can try my way. And then we try our way, we realize it didn't work. But if someone shares their failings with me, it's like, oh, I'm always listening. And when he would tell me the things that he did in business that didn't work out well, these weren't like massive failures, like going bankrupt or anything. It was just like, that didn't work. Thankfully, I'm not going to try that.
Right, right.
The opportunity will come up sometimes where I'm like, whether it's like a wholesaler pitching some weird investment idea or like a client wanting me to do this thing that I don't normally do, I'll be like, I'm tempted. And then I go, oh, wait, my dad told me like he did this thing. It didn't work out. Nah, I can avoid that. Thank you. I did not have to have the firsthand experience.
You don't have to learn the hard way.
And I did not have to learn the hard way on a lot of things. And that's like a huge advantage in life. I can look at my peers in the business and go, oh man, they're still figuring out what I don't have to figure out because my dad told me he tried that 25 years ago and it doesn't work. And that's you've given that gift to your children. They can go, oh, sweet. I'm never going to lose money on an investment like that because dad told me his experience.
Yeah.
I think you were talking earlier about like what motivates you to be a better father, better husband, talking about being faith-based. What parallels do you see between being a faith-based, like in your family, running an organization, a team, motivated and aiming toward God, and then motivating and aiming a business toward the highest ultimate aim? Like, are you open about faith in business? Have you ever been in the past? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there are some advisors I meet or other business owners that make their faith their central part of their business. I mean, they talk about God, they talk about the relationship there. Most people know that I'm a believer, but I don't overtly talk about God in most of my meetings. That's not how I choose to roll. And I'll give you an example. As an advisor, you work with a wide variety of people. And some people would question me sometimes, well, Derrick, I can't believe that you're working with that couple, or I can't believe. And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't see where it says in the Bible that Jesus was super selective, where he said, well, I'm going to hang out with you, but I'm not hanging out with you. He was a good role model in terms of, exactly. He was a good role model of inclusivity. And I believe, look, whether our values may not align or our ideological values may disagree, but look, you're hiring me to help you reach your goals. And ultimately, I think that's the best example that I can be of Christ, is to everybody by adding the most value to them in that relationship. But pulling back, and again, this was the center point of my book. And one of the things in culture I would hear is that people would say money is bad. I would say, money is bad? Why do you say that? Well, some people just have too much money. They need to share their money. Think about the Jeff Bezoses and the Larry Ellisons and the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts. All these people are so successful, they need to share more of their money. I said, well, let me ask you this. When you want something delivered to your house, are you thankful that Amazon is able to get it there sometimes the same day? They were like, yeah. I said, well, how about this? How about instead of hurling rocks at Jeff Bezos, you simply go buy Amazon stock, and then you're going to make money while you're complaining. It's one thing to waste brain cells, but at least take some of your brain cells and use it to buy the investment to make you money. And what I realized was we can spend all of our time criticizing, quote, people who have all the money and villainize them as bad. Or we can say, first of all, they may not be bad, which most of them are not, but what can you learn? What decisions can you make? What tools can you take to become wealthy yourself? And so my mantra now is, I like to make more money to do more good with it. For example, in the past, whether it's been a church or another organization, if there is a giving need, one of the goals I like to set is, man, it'd be great if it's whatever the dollar amount is, I'm going to go make more money, adding value to clients, growing the business so that I can fund that giving goal. That motivates me. So now I'm making more money for a good reason, and I'm doing more good with it. So those are the things that I just find excite me and continue to give me a renewed sense of passion on a regular basis.
Where do you think that negative opinion of wealth or people who possess it comes from?
People who don't have the money.
Well, yeah, okay.
But to your point, Sean, I think that's kind of the trite answer, but there's this cultural thing that says in life, there's the haves and the have-nots. Now, that might have been brought on when people were younger and a well-meaning parent or grandparent slammed their fist on the kitchen table and said, in life, some people have the money and some don't, and our family just happens to not have the money. So you're always going to have a lid on opportunities, and they grow up thinking that. Or they might hear from the media or other people that, there's people that have sort of this secret hidden access to the secrets of money, and we don't happen to have that. And I want to just erase all that and say, look, whether you're 15 or you're 95, there is a level of democratization that has occurred where everybody has access to virtually the same information. And it's a lot of it just is removing and identifying these bad money beliefs that people have taken on that, well, because that person has all the money and I don't have any of it right now, That's just my lot in life. What could I do to create more money? And I really come against that hard and say, look, part of your role as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is to find ways to add more value to people's lives. I mean, we know if you watch Shark Tank on any regular basis at all, there's like pools of capital that suddenly materialize every episode. That money was somewhere else, but once they share their idea, money starts flowing to them.
Yeah.
And so
you were asking, what do people hate? Why do people get so focused on the rich and want them to not have money? I think it's a lot deeper than just that one issue. Christ perfectly loved humanity and perfectly hated sin, perfectly balanced grace and justice, forgiveness and justice, and we don't. So when we see sinful behavior in people, we do not perfectly separate that sin from the individual. And a lot of times we are sinful in our opposition to that misbehavior. So when people see people who may be too wealthy, quote unquote, we're identifying possible greed, yet we're envious in our opposition to greed. Or we are, like St. Jerome, wrathful in our opposition to sloth. Or we are prideful in our opposition to lust. Like we are exhibiting a sin in our opposition to this other sin that we are right to identify as a problematic, but we're not recognizing that we're being sinful in our opposition to it. And so I think that's the deeper issue, is we're just not going to be perfect.
I think also there's a mental framework that a lot of people will adopt that is binary in saying there are the oppressors and oppressed. And if you are wealthy, you must be in the oppressor class, meaning you must have taken advantage of someone, you must have done something underhanded and so forth. Which is not true. I think the same holds true when we talk about the concept of privilege in society, is that I don't think anybody should apologize for privilege. If you have privilege, you should apologize for not using it properly. You should not apologize for not utilizing it for good. And the same with wealth. You shouldn't apologize for having wealth. You should apologize if you're not advancing that wealth towards some worthy purpose.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, when people hear that, there's such, in culture today, there is a demand of I'm either for it or against it. There's really no middle ground, which requires people to think for themselves and ask, how does this issue affect me? And what do I want to do to change that? And so, again, my message is, if you're not happy making the amount of money you're making right now, then you've got to do something about it, or that will not change. And the sad reality is, and why so many people, I think, want to have a side hustle or a side gig and become entrepreneurial is, look, your paycheck right now, the sad truth is, you are worth whatever you're getting paid right now. Whatever your paycheck is, you are agreeing to cash that every 2 weeks, and you're saying, I may not be happy about it, it may not be right, but I agree, this is what I'm worth right now. And you could change that by finding other ways to go make more money. But until you do that, you've got to look yourself in the mirror and say, yep, it's sad but true. That's what I'm worth right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go into maybe it's full commission sales or something like that. And I've said that to people before. They go, I'm just not making enough money here. And it's like, you're making exactly the amount of money that you should be. It's easier to increase income than reduce expenses, I've found. Because you have greater upside. You can only reduce expenses down to zero, hypothetically, but you can increase income to infinity. And so I think, what are you thinking are the best ways that somebody can go out and seek more income or increase their ability to attract wealth?
Well, I think for someone listening right now that says, look, I want to make more money, ultimately the question becomes, for a business owner, what is my focus group telling me right now? And let me unpack that for a second. Your customer base right now is your focus group. You could spend all kinds of marketing research. You could do all these different things. But if you were to do this simple exercise and say, of the past 5 clients or customers I brought on, what problem did they hire me to solve for them? Then another list is, of the 5 clients or customers I have right now that pay me the most money, what problem did they hire me to solve for them? And once you blend those 2 lists and realize, oh, that's the problem, whether I like solving the problem or not, that's the problem people are currently paying me to solve for them. Now it's a matter of determining 2 things. What income do I want to be at? And how do I attract more people strategically, letting them know I have the solution to that problem? Once you do that, now it's a mathematical formula of how many people do I need to reach out to get to the number I need once they clearly understand my marketing message as to here's the problem I'm good at solving, I specialize in solving, and I can solve for them.
What would you say is your top decision-making tip for business owners?
So there's one of my favorite movies is the movie 42 with Jackie Robinson. And as he's about to step off the bus in the movie to greet all the reporters, his handler, the person working with him, says, Jackie, just like you see the ball come in slow at the plate, you want to see these questions come in slow as well. And I would say that's the biggest tip I would offer listeners right now is see the questions come in slow. You might think you know the question. You might already have the answer in your mind, but give it an extra second to let the question set in to make sure you're answering the right way.
That's great. Thanks, Derrick. I'm so glad you came in today. I learned a lot. Where can people connect with you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to connect, Derrick Kinney, and also Instagram at Derrick T. Kinney. It's a great place as well.
Thanks, Derrick.
Hey, thanks, y'all. It was a pleasure.
My takeaway from talking with Derrick is about looking at pausing for times of reflection. So he took that sabbatical and does that every year. I've done the same thing where he's asking himself those 3 questions: how to become a better father, better husband, better business owner. I heard Dan Sullivan ask this question, which I thought was good for business owners, which is, if we fast forward 3 years and we're having this discussion 3 years from now, looking back over the past 3 years, what needs to happen personally and professionally for you to feel like you've had success? And I think there's a lot wrapped up in that question that causes you to reflect on growth, because it doesn't always have to be selling more, having more clients, or having more customers, or having bigger staff. It can be other things. So I think it is good to sort of pause and have that time of reflection every year.
My takeaway is when he talked at the end about taking in the questions slowly, I interpreted that to mean that if you focus on the why, if you focus on the highest aim, and if you're clearly focused on that, then you're not going to get wrapped up in the day-to-day. You know, if you're at the plate and you're focused on that pitch coming in, you're not focused on where are my hands, am I choked up on the bat, am I too far in the batter's box, am I here, that you're not focused on all of the small details, you're focused on the main mission, which is put the bat on the ball, then it will feel slower.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision by subscribing to the show and leaving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. We appreciate the support. It helps business owners like you find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com, on Instagram at decidedlypodcast, or grab a copy of Sanger and Sean's books from the links in the show notes. Finally, we'd like to thank Shelby Peterson of Transcend Media for editing and post-production of the show. Thanks for listening. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.